welcome to the joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and Glendale Housing Authority for November 5th, 2019. May we have roll call for council?
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Devine.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here.
Roll call for Housing Authority, please.
Authority member Devine.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Parazian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Chair Agajanian.
Present.
May we have your report?
The agenda for the November 5th, 2019 joint public meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, October 31st, 2019 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. What's the first item?
Director of Community Service and Parks regarding status of program planning for the fiscal year 2020 and 2021, Cdbg, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan and cancellation and transfer of fiscal year 2019-2020 Cdbg funds. A council motion approving the fiscal year 2020-21 Cdbg program priorities, a fiscal year 2020-21 proposed Cdbg funding allocation plan by funding category and issuance of an RFP to the community for Cdbg social services and Cdbg capital improvement projects. B, Housing Authority motion approving the fiscal year 2020-21 Cdbg program priorities of fiscal year 2020-2021, proposed Cdbg funding allocation plan by funding category, an issuance of an RFP to the community for Cdbg social services and Cdbg capital improvement project. C, resolution appropriating $10,000 in Cdbg funds from the return fiscal year 2019-2020, all for Health for All gift program. D, council motion approving a revised fiscal year 2019-2020 Cdbg funding allocation plan. E, Housing Authority motion approving a revised fiscal year 2019-2020 Cdbg funding allocation plan.
Ms. Beers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Chair Agajanian, members of the Housing Authority, we'll go directly to Maggie Kavarian, Senior Community Services Supervisor.
Good afternoon, Mayor Najarian, members of the Housing Authority, and members of the City Council. I am Maggie Kavarian, and I have a PowerPoint here for your for you to look at up here at for our Cdbg, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan. So the purpose of our program planning is to develop priorities and present the council with a proposed funding allocation plan by funding category, and to issue an RFP for our public social services programs and our capital improvement projects for our nonprofits. At the October 23rd Cdbg Advisory Committee meeting, we reviewed many of these items, and including the community meeting we had on October 3rd for our program priorities and to establish them. We had a community needs survey that we had conducted. We also reviewed the proposed funding allocation plan, and we reviewed and approved the revisions to the $10,000 return funding. The Cdbg Advisory Committee also made some changes to our RFP for our capital improvement projects in regards to our future solar panel installation projects. The community needs assessment and citizenship participation is a very important component of this process because it's a HUD requirement, and it's done a little bit more in depth this year than in many years because we're in the midst of completing our consolidated plan. It's a 5-year consolidated plan for 2020-2024, and it included the senior needs. It included the community needs survey, which had 752 surveys that were returned back. This was done online on SurveyMonkey in English, Armenian, and in Spanish. We also had 70 hard copies returned that we had placed in public counters and public facilities. At our public hearing on October 3rd, we had 19 members of the community come out and give their input, as well as collecting information on census demographics and key demographic indicators to put the program priorities together. And here are the program priorities, a few of the program priorities for fiscal year 2020-21. Ones that stand out this year are mental health services and services for the disabled. We had a lot of residents feel that those were high indicators of what this community needs. And here's our estimated HUD entitlement funding for 2020-2021. This is an estimate. We're estimating $1.9 million in CDBG funding, $157,000 for ESG funding, and $1 million for our home partnership grant. A little over $3 million for the City of Glendale. This is the breakdown of the Cdbg proposed preliminary funding. 20% of that goes to program administration, and then what we set aside is $285,000, 15% to public social services programs for our nonprofits in the community, and the bulk of it, $1.235 million, goes to capital improvement projects. Of that, $640,000 goes directly to community CIP projects. And $595,000 is set aside for city pre-designated programs, and that includes $245,000 for our Section 108 loan repayment, as well as $350,000 for our Pelanconi Park playground and shade structure project for this year. We also had revisions to our current 2019 annual action plan. We had returned funds from All for Health for All, the gift program, in $10,000. And on August 26th, our CDBG committee members approved reallocating that funding to 3 organizations that are currently receiving funds, which is Armenian Relief Society at $5,000, Catholic Charities at $3,000, and Salvation Army, the Zone After School program, at $2,000. There is a timeline for our RFP proposal and process. We held a CDBG open house. This is the second annual one we had done. This was because of council direction to outreach and market to more nonprofits who weren't aware of our funding. We had 10 agencies attend with 13 people in attendance, and we are going to issue the RFP on November 15th. We will be scheduling a mandatory technical assistance workshop on December 5th, and our RFP submittal due date will be September 27th at 5 p.m. on the 27th of December. We usually receive about 20 project proposals, and the process really for the staff begins after the new year. We review these proposals and we prepare a analysis of strengths and weaknesses, and we give agencies time to respond. And we prep all of this and send it over to our CDBG Advisory Committee for their review. And then the Advisory Committee meets up in February of 2020 to interview the agencies and to make their funding recommendations. But then ultimately we come to the City Council and the Housing Authority in April or May of next year for the final approval of the action plan. Now, ESG program follows a very similar RFP process, with their continuum of care, with their board of directors reviewing those proposals. This year, they're in the second year of their grant cycle. So next year, they'll issue an RFP as well. That concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Mr. Agajanian.
On page 3 of this brief report, I want you to compare page 3, the bottom, the next page, which is estimated HUD entitlement funding.
Yes.
Okay. And compare that with the page 11 of the big report, which we have. In here, home program income was not considered there. And my concern is that as you go to page 11 of the big report, so last year, 2019-2020, the total amount was $4,306,658, where 2020-2021 is $3,417,000. This is like $900,000 less than previous year. Why that happened?
Councilmember Alajanian, Assistant Director Peter Zovac is here with the home program, and maybe he can answer the program income question that you have.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the authority and City Council, with regards to home program, that is remaining fairly consistent in the entitlement phase, which is the annual amount that HUD gives to us. $1.2 million last year versus an anticipated $1 million, and that's still subject to a final federal budget as to how much they give us. It usually fluctuates up or down. With regards to the home program income, that's not a number you can necessarily budget for. It's not money that HUD gives us. It is money that our projects have revenue that is generated that is required to come back to us. So we might have a home-funded project in a rental apartment project that after residual receipts are calculated, there's a portion of money that is there as a profit, and some of that money comes back to us. And because the project was originally designated and utilized using home funding, it comes back as home program income. The discrepancy of about $1 million versus an anticipated amount of about $360,000 is the result of a series of projects that were developed by a group called ADI, in which final disposition of the city's lawsuit against them provided a large sum of money that came back to us, and that gets counted as program income. So that accounts for the approximate $800,000 drop.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Cabrania? Okay. You have more? Maggie? We talk about the reallocation, the repurposing, and there's no objections, no questions. I see that our Cdbg chairman is here. How are you, Mr. Chairman? Anything you'd like to say? You're okay with that repurposing of the $10,000?
Good afternoon, the chair and council. I'm feeling good. I'm happy. Of course, I'm not happy, and I think I speak from our committee members, generals, that if there's any way possible that we can, I think we've spoken about this before, the pre-designated funds, that we can ever find a way that we can redirect that to the organizations. I think the committee and the nonprofits will be even much happier. And that's my thought, my feeling, and I think my committee members will share that with me also.
Okay. Well, you're going to be going through the process based on these priorities.
Correct.
And we always keep an open mind on that at council, and we'll see what the applications are requesting and what our pre-designated programs are, and we'll have that discussion.
I have a question,
Devine.
and I'm not opposed to this. I just want to know how are these sums for the returned, the transfer, the $10,000, the extra? How are those sums figured out? The $5,000 for the ARS, $3,000 for Catholic Charities, and $2,000 for the Salvation Army?
Well, after a long discussion between our committee members, back and forth, we looked at every organization, the organizations that had applied, and they have received some funds, whatever funds that they had received. We looked at the percentage of what they had asked and what they have received, and whatever that we could do, and which one can really make it happen with the small funds, they can actually use it. It's not going to be waste, or it's going to be more work for them, for the paperwork and whatnot, in order for them to use that $5,000 or $2,000. So based on that, somewhat we decided to go to that direction, that which organizations will get those funds, that they can actually make those dollars count.
In other words, who needed it the most, or who?
Everybody needs it. There's no one that it won't, but they can use up more. They can actually use that $2,000 or $3,000 then, versus that spending that $2,000 just by preparing paperwork, which actually is not going to help their program.
Right. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we have a council motion at 1-4, and whose resolution is it at 3?
The resolution appropriations, I think it's council.
So, would someone like to move 1A, 3, well,
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
1A,
1A, C,
C,
and
and
E.
I'll move 1A, C, and E for the council.
D. D.
D,
D, sorry.
council.
C and D. A, C, and D. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes.
I have to move the number 2, the Housing Authority motion.
So I'll move 1B
And E.
and 1E for the Housing Authority.
Second.
So, roll call, please.
Authority Member Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Parazian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Chair Agajanian.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn for council?
So moved.
Second.
Council is adjourned.
Is there a motion to close the Housing Authority meeting?
So moved.
Second.
So the Housing Authority is adjourned.
Very good. Now, we're going to go to the special meeting